Welcome to the Title I, Part C Migrant Education Program Eligibility Refresher Training. My name is Claudia Melodic, and I am the Migrant Education Services Manager. This refresher training is for anyone who has received my full eligibility training in the past and is currently certified, or will need to be recertified soon. If this is your first time receiving the MEP eligibility training, you should contact me as soon as possible to set up a time and date for the full training. My phone number is 952-232-1210. For this training, we will be using the MEP Eligibility Factors Checklist. The objectives are to review and understand eligibility factors, to go over the interview and COE process during COVID-19, and to see what's new in IDNR. In order to be eligible for the MEP, a child must meet all the child eligibility criteria. The eligibility criteria are denoted in the checklist with check boxes for each factor and subparts. The checklist may be copied as a worksheet and utilized to guide you through each eligibility determination. The eligibility factors are based on MEP definitions for migratory child, migratory agricultural worker or migratory fisher, qualifying move, and qualifying work. When conducting an interview, remember that moves and qualifying activities from other states are considered in determining eligibility. The child does not have to move with the worker for recent history of moves. However, the child must move as the migratory agricultural worker or migratory fisher, or the child moved to our state with to join or precede the migratory agricultural worker or migratory fisher. The worker's status date and the child's qualifying arrival date are not always the same. Babies born after the move and youth who have graduated are not eligible for the migrant education program. They should be included in the comments section of the COE, but not in the child data section. Before we go over the child eligibility factors checklist, I highly recommend that you make a copy of the checklist to use during the practice scenarios. Factor 1, child's age. The child is younger than 22 years old on the date of the interview. Factor 2, child's school completion status. The child is entitled to a free public education through grade 12 under state law. For example, the child is not a high school graduate or does not hold a high school equivalency diploma, or the child is not yet at a grade level at which the school district provides a free public education. The Minnesota Department of Education recognizes diplomas or secondary school degrees and certificates of completion in lieu of a diploma issued by another country. Factor 3A, child's qualifying move. The child moved within the 36 months preceding the date of the interview. The move made by the child was due to economic necessity and from one residence to another residence, and from one school district to another. Factor 3B, child's qualifying move relative to the migratory agricultural worker or fisher. The child's qualifying move in Factor 3A was as the migratory agricultural worker or migratory fisher, or made the move with, to join, or to precede a parent, guardian, or spouse who is a migratory agricultural worker or a migratory fisher, whose status has been determined in Factors 4A and 4B. Factor 4A, migratory agricultural workers or migratory fishers qualifying move. The parent, guardian, spouse, or the child, if the child is the worker, moved within the 36 months preceding the date of the interview, and the move made by the parent, guardian, spouse, or child, if the child is the worker, was due to economic necessity, and from one residence to another residence, and from one school district to another. Factor 4B, Qualifying work for the migratory agricultural worker or fisher. After the qualifying move in Factor 4A, the parent, guardian, spouse, or child, if the child is the worker, engaged in new qualifying work soon after the move, or did not engage in new qualifying work soon after the move, but he or she actively sought new qualifying work and has a recent history of moves for qualifying work. The qualifying work is seasonal employment or temporary employment or personal subsistence. The qualifying work is agricultural or fishing. Now that we have reviewed the eligibility factors on the checklist, it's time to practice. You should have a copy of the eligibility factors checklist on hand to use with each scenario. After I read each scenario, pause the video to take a few minutes to determine if the children are eligible using the eligibility factors checklist. I will go over the first scenario eligibility determination with you. Scenario 1. A family with 3 children ages 13, 15, and 23 moved in September of last year from Arizona to New York to pick tomatoes while they were in season. This is the family's only livelihood. Are the children eligible for the MEP? Let's look at each factor for this scenario. Factor 1, child's age. In this scenario, the 13 and 15-year-old children meet this factor because they are still under 22 years of age. However, the 23-year-old does not meet Factor 1. Therefore, we will no longer consider him for any of the other factors. Factor 2, child's school completion status. In this scenario, the 13 and 15-year-old children meet this factor because they are still entitled to a free public education. Factors 3A and 4A are to determine if there was a qualifying move by the child and the worker. To be considered a qualifying move, the move must be within 36 months preceding the date of the interview. It must also be due to economic necessity and from one residence to another residence and from one school district to another. Since the family moved together in this scenario, we will look at factors 3A and 4A together. The scenario states that the family moved in September of last year from Arizona to New York and that this is the family's only livelihood. Based on this information, we can say that the move was within the preceding 36 months and that it was due to economic necessity, from one residence to another residence, and from one school district to another. So both the children and the worker meet these factors. Factor 3B is used to determine if the child's qualifying move was as a migratory agricultural worker or migratory fisher, or if the child's qualifying move was with, to join, or precede a parent, guardian, or spouse who is a migratory agricultural worker or migratory fisher, as determined in factors 4A and 4B. We have already determined that the worker made a qualifying move and meets factor 4A. But we still need to consider if the worker meets factor 4B. In this scenario, the children made the qualifying move with the workers. But is the worker a migratory agricultural worker or migratory fisher? Let's check with factor 4B. Factor 4B, qualifying work for the migratory agricultural worker or fisher. After the qualifying move in factor 4A, the parent, guardian, spouse, or child, if the child is the worker, engaged in new qualifying work soon after the move, or did not engage in new qualifying work soon after the move, but he or she actively sought new qualifying work and has a recent history of most qualifying work. The qualifying work is either seasonal or temporary employment or personal subsistence, and it is either agricultural or fishing. Again, we have determined that the worker meets factor 4A for qualifying move. Let's say that the parents in this family engaged in picking tomatoes soon after they arrived in New York last September. Picking tomatoes is seasonal employment and it is agricultural. We can say that they meet this factor, and together with factor 4A, they establish themselves as migratory agricultural workers. Therefore, the children made a qualifying move with someone who is a migratory agricultural worker and they meet factor 3B. So in this scenario, the two youngest children meet the basic eligibility factors and are eligible for the migrant education program. The oldest child does not because he is older than 22 years of age. As you can see from this scenario, you do not have to follow the factors in the order that they are listed. The important thing to determine is that all the factors are met by the child and the worker to be eligible for the migrant education program. Use the eligibility factors checklist to determine if the children in the following scenarios are eligible for the MEP. Scenario 2. Anna, age 18, worked at a processing plant in Arkansas. Her friends told her that the Tyson plant in Iowa was hiring temporary workers in preparation for the holiday season. In September of 2019, Anna moved to Iowa to work at the Tyson plant. When she arrived, the Tyson plant hired her to work for a 3-month period cutting poultry. This is her only means of income. If Anna has not graduated from high school and does not have her GED, is she eligible for the MEP? Using the eligibility factors checklist, take a few minutes to determine if Anna qualifies for the migrant education program. Based on the eligibility factors, is Anna eligible for the migrant education program? The answer is yes. Anna, as the child and as the migratory agricultural worker, meets basic eligibility factors for the MEP. Scenario 3. A family with 2 children ages 11 and 14 moved 10 miles down the road last month to pick blueberries as they were coming into season. The children changed schools, but they remained in the same school district. This is the family's only means of income. Do the children qualify for the MEP based on this move? Take a few minutes and use the eligibility factors checklist to determine if the children qualify for the MEP. Do the children qualify for the MEP based on this move? In this scenario, the children meet factors 1 for age and 2 for school completion status. But because the family did not move from one school district to another, which is a requirement for a qualifying move, they are not eligible. Scenario 4. Pedro and Maria Fernandez and their 3 children ages 9, 12, and 14 reside in Annandale most of the year and consider it their home. They have a long history of migration. Each year they travel to Glencoe for Pedro and Maria to work packing peas and corn, and then to Big Lake to sort potatoes. Last June, the family left Annandale and arrived in Glencoe to begin work packing peas. Both parents worked through the harvest season in late September. When work with the peas and corn ended, Maria returned to Annandale with the 3 children, while Pedro went by himself to sort potatoes in Big Lake. Are the children eligible? Take a few minutes to review this scenario with the eligibility factors checklist to determine if the children qualify for the MEP. So, are the children in this scenario eligible? The answer is yes. The children meet basic eligibility factors for the MEP. In this scenario, the recruiter would use Maria as the migratory agricultural worker because the children made the qualifying move with her. As a reminder, anytime a migratory child moves, you should send a move notification through M6. Scenario 5. In July 2017 and June 2018, Roberto, age 17, made qualifying moves with his parents from Texas to Minnesota. Soon after each move, Roberto's father engaged in seasonal work packing peas and corn. After the family makes a qualifying move to Minnesota in July 2019, Roberto's father finds out the processing plant has closed. He actively seeks work at various apple orchards but is unable to find employment. Is Roberto eligible for the MEP? Does Roberto meet the basic eligibility factors for the migrant education program? Is he eligible for the MEP? For this scenario, send me an email with your answers to each of the eligibility factors in the checklist and to the questions above explaining why Roberto does or does not qualify for the MEP. If you need to take the eligibility certification test to recertify, you will need to send me your answers before your current certification expires. If initial interview questions do not draw out the information needed to determine eligibility, make sure you are asking additional non-leading questions. Review the sample interview script form to familiarize yourself with additional questions prior to conducting an interview. Take as many notes as necessary during the interview, as you may need to share that information. If you are still not sure if a child is eligible, let the family know that you need to check with your supervisor or the state education agency, and you will notify them of the determination. We will need to review all of the factors closely. Having all of the information from the interview will help determine if the children qualify for the migrant education program. If more information is needed, you may need to contact the family for further information before we can determine eligibility. The certificate of eligibility has been updated. The designated graduation school is for students in grades 9th through 12th who will be graduating in Minnesota. If they plan to graduate in another state, we do not need that information. Child number refers to the children in 9th through 12th grade listed in the child data section. For example, child number 3 is in 9th grade and plans to graduate from Sleepy Eye. You would write number 3 in the field and Sleepy Eye High School. This information is not set in stone, and it's okay if they don't know. We only need this information if they are graduating here in Minnesota. We also have a checkbox for no signature due to the pandemic, while we are conducting phone or video conference interviews to determine eligibility. Under the stay-at-home order from Governor Tim Walz, we are not conducting face-to-face interviews to determine migrant education program eligibility. All identification and recruitment of potential migrant families will be conducted over phone or video conference interviews until further notice. At the time of this recording, we are working on a recruitment plan for face-to-face recruiting once the stay-at-home order is lifted. In the meantime, this is the process for contacting families and filling out the COE. Contact the family by phone or video conference. Check M6 to see if the family has been identified recently. If the family made a new qualifying move in the past 36 months, or the qualifying arrival date in M6 is different than what the family states, conduct your interview to determine eligibility for the Minnesota Migrant Education Program. Fill out a COE if determined eligible. And verify date of births, spelling of names, and all other information to ensure accuracy before submitting the COE. It's very important to inform the interviewee of FERPA and their rights and responsibilities found on the back of the paper COE. Keep a copy with you to use if you're filling out an electronic COE. For those students recruited into the MEP, FERPA allows records to be transferred from local education agencies to other agencies that work in collaboration with the MEP to provide services for eligible students. Our Minnesota Migrant Hotline number is also listed on the back of the COE. Read the statement in the interviewee signature section. Make sure they understand what they are agreeing to before checking the no signature box. The interviewee's signature may be collected at a later time, once the stay-at-home order has been lifted. If that is required, we will notify the family. Include the relationship to the child and the date of the interview. Make sure you sign your name and date it the same day of your interview. The SCA must approve the COE before eligibility can start for first-year migratory children. M6 move notices are a fundamental part of the determining eligibility process. A move notice should be filled out in M6 every time a family has arrived or has left the school district. Submit a move notice as soon as possible. For recruitment requests, share our link through email, the Minnesota Migrant Hotline number, or the QR code for when the family moves again or if they know someone who has or is moving.
What's new in IDNR? This year, the borders to our 3 regions have shifted slightly. We have 3 regional recruiters who will recruit mostly in school districts without certified migrant liaisons and build partnerships with agribusinesses and community agencies. We have a seasonal recruiter in Region 2 and are hoping to hire 2 more seasonal recruiters, 1 for North Dakota in Region 1 and 1 for Region 3. Regional recruiters will recruit in their regions, especially in school districts without a certified migrant liaison. They will take part in the partnership agreement meeting with summer migrant education program coordinators, site recruiters, and other staff. They will identify and recruit as a team or individually based on past data and the needs of Head Start centers, migrant education program sites, school districts, and other agencies. Seasonal recruiters will focus on identifying and recruiting potential eligible families. During the stay-at-home order issued by the governor, all recruitment efforts are done by phone or video conference. At the time of this recording, we are working on a recruitment plan for when the order is lifted.
Are you still certified to determine eligibility for the MEP? If your certification has expired or is about to expire, you will need to take the certification test after going through this refresher training. The certification test link will be shared with you once you email me your answers to the questions on Scenario 5 in this training. Please note that if you get an answer wrong, you will need to log in as if you are starting a new test. You may not resume a test unless you have saved it to resume at a later time and date. If you still have questions on eligibility for the Title I Part C Migrant Education Program or on the Certificate of Eligibility, please contact me. I would be happy to help you.
This concludes the Title I Part C Migrant Education Program Eligibility Refresher Training. I look forward to a great season despite our current situation, and I hope everyone is doing well. Thank you.